One of the big problems these days is that we're overloaded with information, whether it be low quality information or even good quality information. Doesn't matter. If you're constantly consuming from the outside, you don't have any time to listen to what's going on the inside. And I believe that for most people in 2025, certainly in the Western world, I think the most important practice for most people is a daily practice of solitude. Some part of the day where you're not consuming from the outside and you're listening to what's going on the inside. People are so confused these days. Let's talk about health for a minute, right? Yes, there's more health information out there than ever before. Health books, health podcasts, health blogs, right? And people say, don't they, that what we need is more information. Information is power. Is that really true? Because if we then take that at face value, we go, well, people have more information than ever before about their health. Yet if you look at the data of physical health and our mental health is declining. But I think it's because that increase in information is confusing us.
What if everything you ever wanted, the success, the recognition, the applause, left you feeling more disconnected than ever? In this raw, soul-bearing episode, Dr. Rangan Chatterjee peels back the layers of modern achievement to reveal the silent epidemic plaguing high performers, the inner emptiness that no accolade can fill. From the outside, he had it all. Best-selling books, a chart-topping podcast, a medical career admired around the world. But inside, he was quietly burning out, questioning everything he thought he knew about purpose, happiness, and health. Together, we dive into the invisible cost of having it all and what it truly means to live well, not just succeed. You'll walk away with a simple but powerful tool to realign your life with what really matters and a deeply human reminder that sometimes the most radical act of success is slowing down and maybe, just maybe, having less is the beginning of having it all. Enjoy. Well, hello, everyone. We've got another amazing, super amazing guest all the way from the UK. So welcome, Dr. Rangan Chatterjee.
Catherine, great to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here. We were just, for those that were not online until now, we were just talking about the difference in weather. So obviously, Rangan is coming to Melbourne, and we were just saying how cold it can be in Australia at times, especially in July. So I was just saying to Rangan to be prepared and have lots of layers.
It's hard for me to believe that because the only image we get of Australia here in the UK is sun, outdoor living, beach, right? So that the tourist board are doing a great job at telling us that when we come in July, it's going to be nice and hot, basically.
Oh, yes. Well, you might get some sun, but I would just be prepared anyway.
I will do, for sure.
So the way that we love to start the show is we always love to ask our guests, what inspired you to do what you do today?
Seeing my dad suffer with a chronic disease for 15 years and seeing how modern medicine, for all of its benefits, really didn't do anything to help address the root cause of what caused dad's problems, I guess in many ways has inspired what I do today. It's interesting, Catherine, I've not really been asked that question in that way before. And I don't think I've even thought about what I do today through the lens of my dad's illness. But, I'm very much a person who sort of feels things in the moment. And you asked me that question. What came up for me was my dad, really. And dad died just over 12 years ago now. Dad was an immigrant to the UK in 1962. And like many immigrants and many non-immigrants, dad worked incredibly hard. But when I say incredibly hard, my dad only slept 3 nights a week for 30 years. He had a day job as a consultant physician at Manchester Royal Infirmary, and then 4 evenings a week, he would also go out all night and do GP house calls. And when dad was about 57 or 58, he got the autoimmune disease lupus. He lost his sight in his left eye. His kidneys failed, and he was basically chained to a dialysis machine for 15 years until he died just over 12 years ago. Now, there's many different ways I could answer this question. There's been many inspirations throughout my life that have led, I think, to me doing what I do today. But I would have to say that being a carer for my dad for so many years, seeing what it's like on the patient side when you're not getting answers in the hospital, whatever it might be, the frustrations, I think has given me a huge amount of insight and empathy for people who are struggling. So I think what I do today, whether it be in my 6 books or in my podcast or when I'm coming to do these tour dates in Australia, right? Whatever it might be, I want to help people live better lives in as compassionate way as I can. And I think a huge part of that desire has come from my experience through my dad's illness.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's beautiful. And so to inspire others to feel better is such a big statement, right? So that for me, I've got all these things bubbling up. Like, how does one do that? First of all, when you explained about your dad, I was like, wow, 3 nights a week. That's not much sleep, where sleep is so important for many aspects, from a psychological, mental health, physical health. And it's funny because before we got on the show, when I was doing a lot more reading around you, I was thinking, you must be really good at time management. 6 books, podcasts, tours. Like, how do you sleep?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because there's many ways to answer that. Just relating to what I said about my dad, I recognized a few years ago that this pattern of overwork that I witnessed in my father was probably showing up in me in some way, right? And I think there's a really interesting point here that you just mentioned, which I don't want to go on too many tangents, right? But so many things are coming up in my brain from what you just said. One of the things is that a lot of the people who we look up to around the world, or we listen to their shows or follow them on Instagram, whatever it might be, not all of them are actually living the lives that you would want to live. It's an uncomfortable truth, but a truth nonetheless that we have to acknowledge, because often the cost of being successful in the modern capitalist Western world in which many of us reside is overwork, chronic stress, and chronic sleep deprivation. Now, I would say I've changed my life dramatically over the last 4 or 5 years, where I actually have a really good work-life balance. But I was falling into that trap. And I think a lot of that comes down to my childhood, where I took on the belief as a young boy that my self-worth was dependent on how well I did at school. Now, I'm not blaming anyone for that. There's multiple sides to any story, but I still remember, Catherine, as a 6-year-old boy coming back from school, maybe I got 19 out of 20 in my exam or my test. Like, I'm really excited. Hey, mum, dad, I got 19 out of 20. And what they would say initially was not well done, or okay, great. So what did you get wrong? Did you come top of the class? Oh no, who came top? Now, I didn't realize until a few years ago that that approach that my parents did with the best intentions in the world had quite a negative impact on how I viewed myself. And I've realized that for much of my life, I did things for external validation, because I took on the belief as a young boy that I'm only loved and validated when I'm top dog, when I've got top of the class or I've got top marks, straight A's. Now, that means you achieve well, and it means you can do lots of things and perform at a high level, but it doesn't mean you're going to be happy. And a few years ago, I realized, despite my TV shows, the best-selling books, whatever it might be, my podcast is one of the most popular health podcasts on the planet, right? I realized that actually, those things actually make you happy. Don't get me wrong, I love those things, but unless you're doing something to validate yourself, that external validation is going to lead to disappointment. And so I made some big changes a few years ago, whereas I believe that I am really content and calm and happy these days, but I've had to make conscious decisions to get to that point, which we can talk about for sure. So I do sleep very well these days. I eat well. I prioritize my lifestyle. And more important than anything, I prioritize my relationships. And, I'm happily married. I've almost been married for 18 years. I've got two children who I love dearly, who also love spending time with me, which is, not always the same thing. And I have time to pursue my passions, but I've had to be very intentional about that. And I feel that I've learned from dads, whether dad made a mistake or not, I don't know whether it's for me to say, right? I can't judge who my dad was, what his purpose was, what he was here to do on the planet, right? So I used to think my dad had made a mistake, but I'm not so sure I can say that anymore, because if my dad's goal was to provide for his family back home in India and give me and my brother the best education in life that he could, well, he kind of did that, right? So I can't say he made a mistake, but I can certainly learn from my dad and go, look, dad made certain sacrifices because he was an immigrant here to the UK. He didn't have support or connections. I do. The tragedy for me would be if I repeat the same behaviors that my dad had to do because I don't need to do them. And I'll give an example, Catherine. I used to feel embarrassed about saying stuff like this or, what will people think? But I'll just be totally honest now because I've realized also that if I share my truth and that makes people feel bad, that's a reflection on them, not really about me, right? So I take 4 to 6 weeks off now every summer. Okay. I stopped releasing my podcast. I think I'm the only big global health podcast that stops releasing because you get told you can't stop. You got to keep going. I'm like, I'm not playing that game. I go off social media and I mostly go off email. Now, am I lucky to have a job that allows me to do that? Yeah, you're damn right I am. At the same time, many people who are in my position don't do that. And I've realized that those 4 to 6 weeks every summer where my wife, me, and my two kids go on adventures and we travel and we see the world, those things are priceless. Do I sacrifice certain parts of success and income or whatever it might be to do that? Yeah, absolutely. But I willingly make that sacrifice. I'm 47 years old, and I honestly feel at this point in my life, I understand what really is important in life. My son said to me, right? My son is now 14. I think 2 or 3 years ago, we had this conversation. I think my podcast studio is in my garden. And I think my videographer, Gareth, we were just in my kitchen, having a drink, having some coffee, I think, and just talking about, releasing 2 episodes a week instead of just 1 a week. Or I can't remember. We were discussing it. And I said, yeah, look, I know that people say that if you release 2 a week instead of 1 a week, you can 4x the show. But I just wasn't interested in doing that, even though the show would be way more successful, or possibly if I did that. And my son at the time, maybe he was 12 or even 11, he said, Daddy, why don't you just release 2 a week? And I didn't know he was listening. And then your show will be much bigger. And I said to him, hey, son, those weekends where we go out on long bike rides and we all hang out together and we play cards and we go and do all this stuff. If Daddy starts doing 2 a week, those weekends, I'll be in the studio recording. I'll be in the studio preparing. I won't be doing those things. And so I think for me, that's quite a powerful illustration of the choice that many of us have to make in the modern world. Time is finite. You cannot do everything. Everything comes with a trade-off. Everything has a consequence. And there's many people out there who are seemingly crushing it on the outside, but you look just underneath the surface and actually the relationships and the sort of enjoyment and the contentment just isn't there. So I don't know if that directly answered your question or not, Catherine, but that's kind of what I spend so much of my time thinking about these days.
I love the fact that you brought that up because it's so true. When I was looking at when I was looking at your profile and looking how successful you are, and that's why I was saying you must be really good with time management. And then you just shared that story about your parents. The thing is, my parents were also immigrants in Australia, but I was conditioned to believe you had to work hard to earn a living. And I see that with my brother and my sister, to the point where I've had 2 burnouts. I'm very transparent about it. My very first one, I kept it to myself because I was like, oh my gosh, what will people think of me? Like, I'm meant to be helping people, and here I am, I can't even get my shit together. So I love the fact that you talk through that, because there is cost and there are sacrifices, but also I love the fact that you prioritize your time with family. And the way that you shared that with your son, that's awesome.
Yeah, look, I think about a lot about what I call the unmeasurables in life. I believe that the unmeasurables are where the gold lies. So, what do I mean by that? Well, what can we measure in society easily? Well, we can measure money, the amount of followers, the amount of downloads, the amount of holidays, the value of your house, right? These things, society values, so we can easily quantify them. But I don't have a metric to tell you about the depth of my relationship with my wife or how well I get on with my children, right? I don't have a metric to easily tell you that. These are the unmeasurables. And so, there's a very simple exercise that I wrote about in my book on happiness that I think is a really useful one for anyone who wants to sort of perhaps think about their lives a little bit differently. Okay. And it's called the Write Your Own Happy Ending exercise. And it comes in two parts, right? So part number one is imagine you're on your deathbed. Okay. So you fast forward to the end of your life, you're on your deathbed and look back on your life and ask yourself, what are three things I will want to have done in my life? Okay. Now, here's the thing. Whilst we're all different, Catherine, the truth is most of us are going to say the same things. How do we know that? We know that because of palliative care nurses who have looked after dying people tell us this over and over again. So Bronnie Ware, you might know Bronnie. I think she's coming to my Melbourne day, actually. But Bronnie Ware is an Australian palliative care nurse, and she spent 7 years caring for people at the end of their life. And she said, oh my God, they all say the same things. They say things like, I wish I'd worked less. I wish I spent more time with my friends and family. I wish I'd lived my life and not the life that other people expected of me. I wish I'd allowed myself to be happy. And she wrote all about this in her wonderful book, The Five Regrets of the Dying. But I really think about that a lot. And then you think about this through the lens of this exercise, most people are going to say some version of that on their deathbeds, or they're going to hope that they'd spent time on those truly important things, which for most of us is actually our relationships, right? So the first part is you write down three things, and then you fast forward to the present and go, well, what are three what I call happiness habits that you would have to engage with each week to ensure that you get the happy ending you just defined that you want? So I did this a few years ago. I do it regularly. Okay. So last time I did it, this is my answer. On my deathbed, I think I'm going to say these three things, or I'm going to want to have done these three things. I will want to have spent quality time with my family and friends. I will want to have done something that positively impacts the lives of other people. And I will want to have made sure I had time to pursue my own passions. So on a week-to-week basis in the present, and I literally have this on a little note stuck up on my fridge in my kitchen, so I'm reminded by every day when I open the fridge. My 3 weekly happiness habits are, if I can have 5 meals with my wife and children, sit-down meals where I'm not distracted by work, that's one metric that I use to make sure I'm spending quality time with my wife and my children. If I record 1 podcast a week and release it, which I've been doing for 7.5 years now, I know I'm going to be impacting the lives of other people. And if each week I either get to play my guitar and sing or go for a long walk or a long run in nature, I know that I'm pursuing my passions, right? And it's such a simple, but it's a deceptively powerful exercise, because it doesn't mean that your work stress suddenly disappears or your burnout suddenly vanishes. But in a world where our to-do lists are never done, where we tend to only fit in the things that are really important once everything else is done, we're living in a time when things are never done. There's always something else you can do. There's always another email that you could answer or another task you could be doing. This list helps me go, no, each week I must prioritize these 3 things. I must make sure I get those 3 things done. Now, it doesn't mean I beat myself up when I don't, because sometimes life gets in the way. Sometimes I'll be traveling for work and I didn't have time for that long run. And I didn't spend that much time with my friends and family or my wife and kids. Okay, no problem. But by being constantly reminded, I'm like, oh, you know what? Last week, I kind of miss that. Okay, cool. I must make sure this doesn't go on for too long. I must make sure I try and reset the balance. And for me, Catherine, it's little simple exercises like these that have had a profound impact on how I live my life. Hence, I'm able to have that conversation with my son. 10 years ago, I couldn't. I would have been seduced by more success, right? But I played that game and I ain't playing it anymore because there's a lot of people who are outwardly successful, and I know a lot of them, and I've treated a lot of them as patients, but inwardly they're struggling. And one of my favorite quotes is from the Chinese philosophy text, the Tao Te Ching. I don't know if you know the book or not. It's a timeless classic, but in the English translation I have, because I think there's all kinds of translations of it, there's this gorgeous quote that is, true wealth is knowing what is enough. And I love that quote. And I think about it all the time. What is enough? What does enough look like? Because I can tell you, Catherine, hand on heart, I am more, in inverted commas, successful than I could have possibly dreamt of 10, 15 years ago. I've had more external validation than I could have possibly dreamt of, right? But I've realized that those two things don't bring you inner peace, contentment, and happiness. It's a cliche, but it's absolutely the truth. And people will say, oh, okay, it's all right for you. You've achieved that success. So you can say that, yeah, sure, I get it. And I accept that, right? Sometimes we have to go through it to realize it. But the question I ask myself all the time is, what is enough? And I go, look, I've got enough. I've got enough, right? I've got a job that I love. I've got a job that allows me to pay my mortgage and feed my family. I've got the autonomy to take 4 weeks off in the summer to go and see the world. It doesn't get any better than this, Rangan. It does not get any better. You've got a good marriage. I still live 5 minutes away from my mum, who's elderly now and needs a lot of care. I see her most days and help her out. For me, I have this rounded, intentionally designed life. And I think we all can do that. All of us might have some stresses. We might have some things that we can't change. We might have elderly parents who, we're having to do a lot of work for and care for. And I've been there, so I get it. But it's that intentionality about how we're living our life and what trade-offs we're making that I think about all the time, Catherine. I really do.
I love that. I'm having a little epiphanies here as you are speaking through it. And the thing for me, which resonated with me with what you were saying, is the internal versus the external. So the internal, you can't measure it. So the love, the joy, how do you measure that? They're the things that light you up. But the danger in the work that we do, and I don't do anything like you, for me, it's that drive of wanting to help more people. And I'm maybe a people pleaser. That's probably the best way to describe it. Where, how do you know when to say no more when there's so many people out there hurting, so many people, not believing themselves, so many people resisting in change. Like that's, I think for me, it's like, it's more that I get so much internal joy that I don't feel like I work a day in my life. And the cost is burnout.
I would say do that simple exercise, that write your own happy ending exercise, right? Because that's a very simple exercise that you can use to write out your 3 weekly happiness habits. And then you can then ask yourself, am I getting enough time to do those 3 happiness habits that will guarantee me the happy ending that I said I wanted? It's not the only way you can tackle this, but it's one of the ways, right? So again, I would challenge anybody listening to this podcast, even if they think they've got their life sorted, just do that exercise. It'll just take you, maybe the first time might take you 5 to 10 minutes. If you have to reflect a bit more, maybe 10 minutes. But it is so powerful. You will learn stuff about yourself. You'll go, oh, this thing that I say is really important, I haven't really done it for the last 2 months. Okay, no problem. You don't want to go into guilt or shame or any of that negative self-talk. You just want to be aware, go, oh, that's interesting. I keep saying that's important, but my actions don't show me that that really is important. Can I make some small adjustments? So that's one way I'd encourage you or anyone to think about it. But then I think another thing that I think about a lot, and really was kind of one of the main motivations behind my very latest book, Make Change That Lasts, is this idea that it's not about the behavior, it's about the energy behind the behavior. Okay. And I think, I write about that through the lens of habit formation. Why is it that we can't bring in new habits or get rid of old bad habits, whatever it might be? And I think too much of our time is focused on the behavior, not the energy behind the behavior. For example, let's say sugar. Let's say someone's trying to reduce how much sugar that they're consuming, right? Which is very, very common in the modern world. Most people who have tried to quit or reduce their sugar intake in the past already know that it's having a negative effect on their life. Okay. They don't actually need another book telling them about the negatives of sugar, right? And I say that as an author myself, right? You don't need another book telling you about its impacts on your teeth and your gut microbiome and your risk of diabetes. You sort of already know that, right? What you need is a better understanding of why do you keep going to sugar when you say you don't. Oh, when I'm sitting in front of the television on the sofa at 9 p.m. and I've eaten in inverted commas well all day and I feel like the ice cream, and before you go and get the ice cream, I say, okay, just take a pause, right? And answer what I call the 3 Fs: feel, feed, and find. Okay, what am I really feeling? Is it physical hunger or is it emotional hunger? Okay, am I really hungry or is it, no, actually, I'm not hungry. I had a big meal an hour ago. What it is that I'm actually a little bit stressed. I had a row with my partner. The kids' bedtime took too long. I've been on Zoom calls all day and I haven't seen another human being. This is a little treat to me. Okay, no worries. Go and have it, right? But at least you're just tuning in now to what's really going on. The next time you go to the second F. Okay, so what am I feeling? Okay, I'm feeling stress. The second F is, how does food feed that feeling? When I have the ice cream, at least in the short term, I feel a little bit less stressed. Okay, great. Go ahead and have it. At least now, you're not kidding yourself that you were hungry and you really needed the sugar. You're like, I'm soothing stress here. Great. And then the next time you go through those first two, and then you get to the third F, which is find. So now you know the feeling, the first F, stress. Now you know how the food feeds the feeling. It helps reduce stress in the short term. Then you go to, how can I now find an alternative behavior to feed that feeling? So I'm feeling stressed. I could have ice cream. Yeah, but I really love yoga. So I could put YouTube on and do a 10-minute yoga sequence. Okay, they'll both reduce your stress just through different mechanisms. It could be that you've been on Zoom calls all day and you just feel a bit yucky and you've not had any time to yourself. Well, instead of nourishing yourself with ice cream, you could run yourself a bath and nourish yourself with a candle in your bathroom, having a relaxing bath. Okay. There's a multitude of different ways, but that is like, yeah, I said it through sugar. You can use that for alcohol or 3 hours scrolling on Instagram, whatever it might be, but it's a very useful framework to start looking at our behaviors. Take that back to what you were asking about. How do we know, right, when these things are affecting us? So where does that drive come from? When you love helping people, so your desire to help more and more people gives you joy. But unfortunately, sometimes that desire will come at the cost of your own well-being. And I know what that feels like because I've also been there before. But I also realized that I don't think I can actually really help people in the long term unless I look after myself. Okay. And so for me, one of the questions I think is quite useful to ask ourselves these days, and I think it's particularly useful for teenagers who are growing up in a very different world to the world in which we grew up, Catherine. But I think that question I often think about is, would I still be doing this if no one was watching? I think it's a very powerful question that gets to the heart of internal v external validation. A lot of the time these days, people, and I'm not criticizing, right? I'm just observing people, adults, teenagers, they do things so that they can post about them and show the world what they're doing. Right. So the question is, would you still be doing that if nobody could say how great you were, or, that they were liking, say, oh, aren't you good? You're doing this for others. That's a key question. It can be an uncomfortable question sometimes. Would you still be doing it if no one else was watching? I think it's another useful question that we can all ask ourselves.
I love that. And by the way, you were talking directly to me about the ice cream. That was me. So
Really? I didn't know that.
I love ice cream, and I do go. The ice cream is my weak spot, but I'm going to do that exercise. That's awesome. I love it. And
Do it. Can I just say, Catherine, on that, I just want to add to that really quickly, right? That exercise is not about guilt and shame and regret. Guilt, shame, and regret will never lead to change in the long term, right? We get a negative self talk, we beat ourselves up, and that leads to more sugar and ice cream consumption. That exercise is about awareness, right? Awareness is 80% of the journey to successful behavior change. I'm convinced of it. That's what I've seen in over 23 years of seeing patients. Once that patient tunes in to their own awareness, they start to own it. They're less powerless. It doesn't mean you can change it straight away, right? Just to be clear, it doesn't mean you get the awareness and go, oh, I'm done now. No, 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 no. It's a process. But once you're aware, you cannot unknow what you just learnt. And that's where the power is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because I know you can be aware, but without acting on it, because I think most people resist change anyway. The brain does anyway. So we will
Yeah,
naturally resist the change, especially if it feels uncomfortable. I always have this saying, like, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, is that's where all the magic happens.
for
But
sure.
it's easier said than done. Yeah. So for me, I love to, like really, because I love the whole behavior thing, because behavior is not really truly who the person is. It's just what they're thinking and feeling. That's why they're
Exactly.
showing up that way, right? So for me, I'd like to really get more of an understanding on how do we rewire the internal dialogue. Like some of those exercises you gave just then are brilliant because they're short, they're easy to remember. But how long do we need to do it for change to really, some people say do it for 21 days and you create new neural pathways. Some say 33. What's the magic kind of like time for us
I
to embed it?
Yeah, I don't think there is a magic time. Honestly, I've looked at all this research and I've seen the 21-day one, the 66-day one, the 34-day. I think there was a study which suggested that. The truth is, the way I see it and what I've experienced with patients is that we're all different. Okay, we are all different. Some people can make big change in 2 or 3 weeks. For others, it's a more intentional process over 4, 5, 6 months, right? But that shouldn't put people off, right? Because here's the other thing I realized. We want to fast track to the end. Oh, where we've sorted this. But the things you learn along the way are the most powerful things you will learn. And they're the things that will help you when you fall off track, as you will, as we all do. You don't get to the point where you've suddenly, oh, I heard this podcast. Oh, and I get it. Sugar's how I manage stress. Great. My life's fine now. I'm never, ever going to use sugar to manage stress again. That ain't going to happen, right? But that process of being aware, sometimes managing a different behavior like yoga or a bath or 1 minute of jumping jacks to burn off that stress, whatever it might be. And other times where you do actually end up with the ice cream in your mouth, that's all part of the journey. That's all part of you learning, right? And you don't want to fast track the learning because if you just get to the end point, this is why I think sometimes these 2, 3 week plans, they don't work so well because actually, don't get me wrong, I've used them with patients in the past, right? But the more I think about it, the more I think if you get to the end goal in 2 weeks, you go on that sugar detox, you've cut it all out, right? And you white knuckle it. Great. You experience how good you could feel without it. More energy, better skin, better sleep. Great. And it's very powerful for that reason because you very quickly realize what impact this food or the excess sugar is having on you. But actually, 2 weeks is probably not enough time for most people to learn about their triggers and their patterns. And so this might be a slightly counterintuitive view, but I kind of feel these days, and I'm constantly evolving my view on this. The truth is, 10 years ago, if we had this conversation, I might have given you a different answer. But as I get older, as I've seen more patients, as I hopefully have gained a bit more wisdom as I get older with each year, I honestly, one of the other things I think about is you don't want to fast track change. You want to learn the lessons that that process gives to you. And if you properly pay attention and learn them, that's when you get to the point where the change truly lasts. So I'm honestly at a point now, Catherine, and again, I sometimes wonder whether you should say stuff like this because it sort of puts people off. People want to be able to relate to you. But I find change quite easy these days. I didn't for years. I'd have to think about it. Oh, what habits, rules am I not using here? But once you go through that process enough and you stop beating yourself up, that was key for me. Stop the negative self talk, right? And you go, instead of going, oh my God, you had the sugar yesterday, or you missed your meditation yesterday, you stupid idiot, which I used to say to myself. I used to have a vicious negative critic inside my head. Once you stop that, you go, oh wow, oh yeah, yeah, you missed the meditation yesterday, didn't you? Why did you do that? Oh yeah, you're a bit knackered. You just needed a bit of a lie-in that day, whatever it might be. Okay, cool. What was the impact throughout the day? Oh, you were, a bit more reactive, less present than you could have been. Oh yeah, I'll try and get back onto it tomorrow. Once you start to change your relationship with that behavior, you start to have that kind, loving, compassionate voice with yourself. That is a significant step to long-term change. And as I write in Make Change It Lasts, effortless change is actually available to everyone. You're not going to get there straight away. But when you go through these kind of intentional processes of trying to figure stuff out, at the end of the road is change that actually is a lot easier than people think.
Yeah, I mean, saying they say that change, once acknowledged, not just aware, but acknowledged, can happen in instant.
Exactly. Once you
Yeah.
truly align inside, like honestly, it can happen. That's why I don't think it's 21 or 66 or 33. It's like, no, you do it enough until the point where you know, you get it. Something locks in and your brain, your body, and your mind and your heart is all aligned in one place. Actually, change ensues quite naturally at that point. So I think a lot of the problems we have with change, which is kind of why I wrote Make Change at Last, is because we're fighting it constantly. Like, oh, I'm not good enough. Why couldn't I make that habit stick? I'm fighting it. But once you are able to get that alignment in who you are and how you're showing up in the world, and that write your own happy ending exercise we mentioned before is one of those simple exercises that helps you tune into what's important, you naturally find that other things in your life start to come in sync as well.
They do say what you resist is it persists, right? So that's that thing. It's more that and it's actually closes you off. Whereas if you're more accepting of and understanding why you do what you do, I think that helps you accept and embrace and be a lot more compassionate. Like you said, like, okay, so I missed the yoga, but why did you miss the yoga? And you're able to talk you through your whys and give yourself a lot more understanding. I think that I know I'm only thinking about it for myself. I mean, some of the changes I've made over time has actually made me be more, not just aware, but what are the drivers? What's that emotion? Is it guilt that's driving this behavior that I need to, like you were talking about, these low vibrational frequencies or emotions, they bring more of that to you than when you're thinking more of those high vibrational frequencies or emotions like, acceptance and loving and caring. So, and the thing is, the other thing too, you mentioned about this, I know so many people that read books, podcasts, they're consuming all this knowledge, but not doing anything with it. And I think
Yeah.
we've been conditioned, like all these podcasts now, all these books, and we almost like overwhelmed with information. And what I like about you is that you make it
I
simple to
try to.
digest.
I try to look. You're highlighting a massive point. This is something I spoke a lot about on my UK tour recently. This idea that one of the big problems these days is that we're overloaded with information, whether it be um, low quality information or even good quality information. It doesn't matter. If you're constantly consuming from the outside, you don't have any time to listen to what's going on the inside, right? And I believe that for most people in 2025, certainly in the Western world, I think the most important practice for most people is a daily practice of solitude. Some part of the day where you're not consuming from the outside and you're listening to what's going on the inside. People are so confused these days. They're confused over let's talk about health for a minute, right? Yes, there's more health information out there than ever before. Health books, health podcasts, health blogs, TV shows covering health, whatever it might be, right? And people say, don't they, that what we need is more information. Information is power. Is that really true? Because if we then take that at face value, we go, well, people have more information than ever before about their health. Yet if you look at the data, our physical health and our mental health is declining. So that increase in information is not translating to better health outcomes. Why? Because, because it's not. And I think there's a few reasons for that, but I think it's because that increase in information is confusing us, right? So people will now say, Dr. Chatterjee, look, it's really confusing, right? I listened, I know I should only listen to well-credentialed experts, right? Because that's the common narrative these days, which I don't agree with actually, as it happens, which people are surprised at because they think as a medical doctor, as a professor at Chester Medical School, I should be saying just get your advice from well-credentialed health professionals. I don't say that because I believe everyone actually, there's all kinds of people out there who've got phenomenal advice for us to follow. I don't think it's just the preserve of people who've been to university and got certain degrees. I think sometimes the advice we get from people with the credentials is not the best advice. But if you accept that it actually should only be well-credentialed experts, if you believe that, here's the problem. Okay, you could listen to one expert, and I'm thinking of something in mind here. Two people who've been on my own podcast in the past. So, a psychiatrist from Harvard Medical School, right? Top-notch institution, who will be telling you about the benefits of a ketogenic diet for some people with severe mental health problems. And he will show you case studies, and he will show you published research to support what he's saying. Then you can also another week talk to someone, let's say Professor Felice Jacka, okay, who has done studies showing that a modified Mediterranean diet can, in some individuals, put their depression into remission. Okay. And so people then go, Dr. Chatterjee, I don't know which expert should I believe. Should I believe this expert talking about keto or this expert who's talking about Mediterranean? And then they're getting confused because they've both got the credentials, they've both got the research. Dr. Chatterjee, what shall I do? Which expert should I trust? Catherine, I don't think that's the right question to ask ourselves in 2025. I think the more helpful question is not which expert should I trust? It's why do I no longer trust myself? Because both of those experts could be correct for different people, right? There is no one true diet that works for all of us. That's one thing I've learned in over 2 decades of seeing tens of thousands of patients. I have seen some patients thrive on a whole food vegan diet. I've seen other patients thrive on a low carb diet. I've seen other patients thrive on a paleo diet, right? So for me, half of these debates are pointless. I'm like, yeah, okay, why are you fighting over what is the best diet? Can't we go, oh, wow, isn't it amazing that you transform your health on a whole food vegan diet? Oh, wow, isn't it amazing that you reversed your type 2 diabetes and have got this energy and vitality now following a whole food low carb diet? So I'm just much more open to believing from what I've seen that different things work for different people. But the only way you'll get there is by learning to trust yourself again, having some time with yourself each day, whether it's a walk while not listening to something or looking at your phone, whether it's a bit of journaling each morning, some breath work, some sort of time where you just get to tune in. If you're confused over diet, and let's say those two experts, you don't know what to follow, why don't you try them both for 4 weeks? And during those 4 weeks, you pay attention. How am I feeling? What's my energy like? What is my bloating like? How was my sleep? How do I feel in myself? What's my mood like? If you pay attention, you will know after 4 weeks which of those diets is better suited to you at this particular moment in time. So this is what chapter 1 of Make Change At Last was all about, Catherine. It's basically saying we've outsourced our inner expertise to external experts. I'm not saying ignore external experts like me. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, yeah, listen to people. Sure, listen to people who've got the expertise that you might want to learn from, but then put it through your own filter and ask yourself, which of these is going to work best for me?
I'm so grateful you said that. I can't tell you how many people have gone down, doesn't matter which rabbit hole, and swear that it works and it's changed their life. And I've tried it, but it doesn't work for me. And I think that it's so true with what you're saying. We've forgotten to tap in, tune into our own core, our own body, intuitively. What sits with us, what doesn't sit with us. We've lost our sense of direction. We've lost our way in some crazy, you know, bombarding kind of information world that we live in. And I think that, yeah, I mean, look back 50 years ago, our parents didn't have any of the information that we have now. And, you know, look, I'm French by, I was born in France, and you go in France, everyone lives there to like 90 or 100 years old in some of the villages that I was born, one of the villages I was born at, and or where my family live at. So, but they don't have podcasts, they don't have books, they don't have anything but their own intuition. This doesn't sit right with me because every time I eat beetroot, I get indigestion. Or that doesn't. So, you know what I mean? They're using the intuition. So I love that you brought that up. I am conscious of your time, and I did want to ask you, is there anything that you wanted to say before we go into our 3 shiny golden nuggets, or a question that I didn't ask you that you would like to express in this moment?
No, I wouldn't say there's anything in particular, if I'm honest, Catherine. I think your questions have been fantastic. And it's really interesting for me, actually, that I'm in a very interesting space at the moment because I have had a very busy 6 to 8 months for a couple of reasons. At the end of last year, I don't really do television anymore out of choice. Yeah, I don't need to go into all the reasons why I choose not to do television anymore. I guess I have a bigger reach myself on my own podcast, so I put my attention to that, where I can have much more autonomy. On television, you don't know how people are going to edit things and put them out there. But I did help Channel 4 make a show last year on the impacts of smartphones and technology on children, because it's something I'm very passionate about. So I filmed that September, October last year. Then I went into an international book launch of Make Change at Last. So that involved some travel to America and interviews. And don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I'm just telling you factually what happened. And then I did a UK national theatre tour in March, 16 dates around the country. I'd never done that before. It's all been fantastic. But yes, my balance has shifted off slightly, as it does from time to time. So these 3 months are about me rebalancing. And I'm reflecting a lot on life, and I think that's an important point. We mentioned work-life balance and these 3 happiness habits that we might want to focus on each week before. But we've also got to understand that life has ebbs and flows. Sometimes life does get busy for whatever reason. I don't think that's a problem in and of itself. I think the problem is if that continues for too long and you don't reset. So I knew they were going to be busy a few months. I made sure at the end of my UK tour in March that April, May, and June were a lot quieter for me. I'm saying no to pretty much every single speaking invitation or podcast, or I'm just focusing on my family, my job, my mother, right? That's what I'm focusing on at the moment. But I'm thinking a lot about stuff and about life. And I think, at this age, you probably think about life a lot. You see parents die, you see parents get older. I think frailty and mortality becomes a much more top of mind. And so I don't feel that there's anything you haven't asked me, but I kind of feel that I'm expressing some of these concepts in slightly different ways to how I've thought about them before, because I haven't really done an interview now for a little while, but I've had a lot of introspective time for the past few weeks. So actually talking to you today has been really fun because it's almost like a bit of solitude, right? In some ways, where although we've never met before, I kind of feel we're having this really deep and authentic conversation. Your questions are helping me think about my life in a slightly different way. So I don't wish you'd ask me anything different. In fact, I guess that's a long-winded way of saying thank you. I've really enjoyed the questions you asked me, and they've helped prompt a bit of inner thinking for me. So yeah, thank you.
And I want to say thank you to you as well, because just before, when you asked me, would you still do what you're doing if nobody was watching? And inside of me, I went, yes, because I don't like social media. I get other people do it because I used to always say it's a black hole. And I agree with you with like technology and, like I just feel like it takes people away from them. That's why I call it the black hole. But in saying that, there's still something there, because when I hear somebody say, I've through this time with myself, for myself, this is what I've learned about myself. I do get a buzz. So that's still an external validation, which I wasn't aware of until now. So I wanted to say thank you, because it's not
Oh,
about the people, it's about the individual. So the moment I see somebody say, they're happier, their marriage is, they've saved their marriage, whatever that may be, gives me great joy. But that's still external validation.
it is. At the same time, I think we can also be overly harsh on ourselves. I think it's nice to examine that and explore it for sure, but I think it's also okay to feel. Um, I guess it's for me, it's about what is that feeling, right? Is it does it come from a place of lack or a place of fullness, right? So, does it come from a place of Catherine's not good enough? I need to keep proving my worth. And then someone says you've helped save their marriage. Oh, yeah. And you, Catherine, was good enough. Yeah. I'm worthy. Right. That's very different from you feeling really good about who you are. You know your inherent value, that you are enough, irrespective of how many people listen to your show or not. Right. You still have incredible value to humanity and to your life. And so when they say that, you go, oh, that's nice. It's nice that I had a conversation that helped that person save their marriage. So again, it's not necessarily the behavior, it's the energy behind the behavior. That's where I think the gold is.
I love that. And I think maybe once upon a time was that, I mean, I'm going to be 60 in March next year. So for me, I've come to a point where it's very much about the explosion happens from my heart, internal out. So yeah, I love the fact that you said that. So it is our time. It is your time because I'm conscious of your time. But the way that we wrap up the show is we love to share 3 shiny golden nuggets with our listeners. So what would be those 3 shiny golden nuggets that you would like to leave with our audience today?
Yeah, Catherine. So I have so many what I hope are golden nuggets to share. But I think the way I'm going to answer that question is through the lens of a daily practice of solitude. Okay, as I've already mentioned, I think a daily practice of solitude is one of the most important things that we can do. And I start my day by asking myself 3 questions. Okay. So maybe the 3 golden nuggets will be these 3 questions. They don't take long, but they're very impactful and potentially going to have a profound impact on your life if you answer them regularly. Okay, so the 3 questions are these. Number 1, what is one thing I deeply appreciate about my life? Okay, it's a simple question, but it's very powerful. It's a question of gratitude. And we know from the scientific research that gratitude helps you with anxiety, depression, it can help you sleep better, can help you make better decisions, can make you feel happier. There's so many benefits. And this is a very simple question that helps you at the start of each day tune in to what you're grateful for, what you appreciate. And so instead of focusing on all the negatives in your life or all the emails you have to get and whatever it might be, you focus on that one thing, okay? Question 2, what is the most important thing I have to do today? Again, a deceptively powerful question. Okay, in a world where our to-do lists are never done, this question, I was going to say forces you, but I would say encourages you to make a decision. At the start, you think, oh, there's loads of important things, but over time you realize, no, there's only one truly important thing. And it might start up being a work deadline, but it might be to do with, oh, I must spend quality time with my wife this evening once the kids are in bed. Or I must make sure I go for a walk today at lunchtime. It doesn't mean the other things in your life weren't important, but it's a very simple question at the start of your day, which helps direct your attention that day. And then in a world where your to-do list is never done, as long as you got that one thing done, that day counts as a win. And the third question, which I started asking myself a few years ago, which I absolutely love, is what quality do I want to showcase to the world today? So much of the time, we end up being the people who we are not. We end up being reactive, stressed out, not present, right? No one wants to be that person, but we fall into these repetitive behaviors. We wake up a bit tired, we jump onto our phone, we're consuming all the time, and then we're in that reactive mode. But this question just encourages you to go, well, what is the quality I want to showcase to the people around me today? So for me, it's often things like patience or kindness or compassion. And what it means is by maybe sitting with a coffee in the morning, I'll just write these things out in my journal. It just means if I put down patience, for example, if later on in the day I'm a bit tired and I'm tempted to be impatient to someone on the road or with my children or with my wife, it doesn't mean I'm perfect. It doesn't mean I'll never be impatient, but I'm more likely to remind myself, oh yeah, Rongan, you put down this morning, you want to showcase that quality of patience. So you're much more likely to be that person. And then if you're not, the following morning when you ask yourself that question, you're like, hey, yeah, I wanted to be patient yesterday, but I wasn't able to be then. I'm going to try really hard today. I think the reason I wasn't patient is because A, B, or C. I didn't take a 10-minute walk at lunchtime. I just worked through whatever it might be. You're building up that awareness and you're going to try again the following day. So I don't know if that works for your audience, but those three questions have changed my own life. They will take you less than 5 minutes to do. It is free of charge to do them. You don't have to buy anything or go anywhere. And so I'd encourage your audience, Catherine, to start each day with those three questions and then let both of us know, we're talking about the negatives of social media, but if they are on social media, send me or you a message and let me know how you got on. I'd love to hear, basically.
I love those three questions. What a way to pre-pave your day and set beautiful intentions for your day. Thank you for that. That's beautiful. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your time, your energy, and your love with all of us. And I can't wait till the Australian tour. For everyone listening, watching, we're going to have everything in the show notes. I just want to say thank you and be prepared to come to Australia. Make sure you rug up. Make sure your whole family brings layers.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to tell my wife that just yet. I think we're in her head, it's a sunny summer holiday, but I might just subtly drop it in over the next few weeks before we pack. But yes, I can't wait. Honestly, it just genuinely, it feels like such a privilege to be able to come to the other part of the world, all the way to Australia from the UK, and have people who want to come and hear you talk, ask you questions live. As I said before, I never could have dreamt of this stuff 10 or 15 years ago. And I know some people from other parts of Australia saying, why are you not coming to Perth? Why are you not coming here? I couldn't get everywhere on this trip, maybe in the future. So I've decided just to stick to Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane. But they're three gorgeous venues. I think going to be really fun evenings surrounded by other like-minded people. I think that's one of the things I realized on this UK tour, Catherine. People love being in a theatre where everyone around them is also interested in the same stuff as they are. So, Catherine, I know you're hopefully coming to the Melbourne show, but for anyone listening, I really hope to see you at one of those three theatres this July.
100%. And for those that are in Perth or any other parts of Australia, Adelaide and so forth, they can fly across. It's only like an hour and a half, or won't be as long as, 20-hour flight for you, for you
Yeah,
coming to Australia.
exactly.
We're very grateful you're coming. So thank you so very much.
Oh, thanks for having me, Catherine. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so very much. So have I. Thank you.